Greetings and welcome to another edition of the Dallas Area Opinion Podcast. This is version 2 of this podcast. In the first one, I even joked at the beginning, go ahead and just start laughing. I'm not even going to tell you why, but when you are a 19th century person trying to use 21st century technology and you just don't pay attention to what you're doing, goofy things happen. Yes, I recorded one before this, and yet I do not have it. Go ahead and laugh. I have no idea. Actually, I do, and I'm not going to admit to how generically idiotic mistakes I made. But hey, it's fun. We're going to get going. Today is a follow-up. I'm not sure I want to say follow-up. Continuation of something I wrote a few days ago on the blog. It's in regards to using resources to support some of your points. I don't use them very often. I talked about that in my blog post. Now I'm going to kind of get into some of the reasons why it's hard to use resources to support your opinions, your ideas, what you want to get across. And this goes to, a lot. What I want to do is a little different. I'm not trying to change the world. I'm just trying to make sure that what we're trying to do, we do it better. And that's doesn't get a lot of excitement. People are more excited when things are going off the rails and people can convince them to listen to them. So I'm going to use 3 examples of why I struggle with using resources in regards to, and I'm going to say specifically me using resources, but the push and pull of using resources. So my first example is our wondrous President Donald Trump. Yes, he's actually going to be an example, and I have good reason to use him. As I mentioned, it's hard to get people to want change. The change I want, of course, is I just think Democrats and Republicans have failed us. We need new leadership, new political parties. But overall, I think our country's still in pretty good shape. We're doing well. We just need better public policy. We need to fix some things. Sure, we got some problems we need to work on, but they're fixable. But we need new people in there to do it. The current people aren't doing it. Where Donald Trump is successful is his famous phrase, make America great again. He has created fear, he has created paranoia, anger, and he's got people to believe that things are so far off the rails that he needs to fix them. And that's not the actual resource point I'm trying to make. I'm just trying to make you have to understand where people are coming from when you use them as a resource. I do think we need better immigration policy. He's out there touting stronger immigration. He's got all these ideas he wants to do, and he's throwing them out there left and right since he got inaugurated. I look for a more methodical approach, but as a resource, you can look at what he's doing and get some positives from it. I don't like him, but he has valid points. We do need, now he doesn't say better immigration policy. I say better immigration policy. He uses other words. But our immigration policy, no matter what scale of it you believe in, needs an overhaul. And it needs one pretty bad. It needs one for the 21st century. Speaking of being in the 21st century versus the 19th century. So how do we learn, when we use resources, how do I go out and write something and say, hey, we need new leadership, we need new immigration policies? Do I pick and choose what I think Donald Trump is saying might work? I could. And you have to be open-minded to those kind of things. Even people you do not agree with, or worse, think horrible of, still may have valid points or valid ideas, or at least are touching on policies or topics that need to be addressed. And you need to be able to offer a counter argument, or really a better argument. But this is, in using resources, you have to look at how other people are successful. Now, do I go out and scream and say, Chicken Little and, the sky is falling, the sky is falling? No. Donald Trump has kind of done that, doesn't use that verbiage, but with all the immigrants are horrible, they're poisoning the blood of our country, whatever the horrible things he says, he gets people to listen to him. And he gets people to think, oh, this guy understands the problem. Trump doesn't understand the problem, but the way he comes across, very dynamic, and again, towards the world is falling apart mentality, he gets people to listen to him. I don't do that, but maybe, it's something I should look at. How do I stay within the framework of being responsible and making responsible opinions and still get people to realize we do need change. Sky isn't falling, at least not yet, but we still need to get change. The second person I want to use as an example is Richard Wolff. He's an economist, or says he's an economist, does many YouTube videos, quite a few, and I've seen a few of them. And his presentations are significantly different from Trump in that his are very subtle. His videos are he tries to make them dynamic to a point, but he's not out there being bombastic. He is talking about the decline of America, talking about all the horrible things is going to happen to America. We're an empire in decline. Again, I'm still thinking we get new leadership in there with better ideas. We're not going to be in decline. Now, we do need to make some changes. I agree there. And in his discussion about America being in decline, he outlines why he thinks so. I think those are some problems we can fix. So how do you use a person like this as a resource to say, hey, go see him and see when he talks about this, X or Y, this is right, but how do you pull people out of, but don't listen to this other stuff? I think he has some kind of subtle Marxist leanings, socialist leanings. I'm not sure. I haven't seen him come out and say I'm a socialist. But if you listen to some of the underlying comments in his videos, you get the impression that he may favor Marxism. He talks about China and how successful they are, but he doesn't support China. He doesn't say you should become like China. He doesn't out and out say that. So you have to be careful how you address where he's coming from. But in addressing some of the things he talks about, he's identified some problems that need to be resolved, fixed, improved, better public policies, which is what I talk about. So how do I use a resource like that, where I can get good ideas from, address them and say, I talk about public policy. Here is someone's identified some public policy that needs to be made better. Let's talk about it, but keep people away from the more subtle underlying things I'm concerned about. Again, how do you use your resources? What this podcast is more about. You can see good things from different people, even though you may not fully agree with everything they're doing. So we need to look at these things and determine, where do you get resources? How do you use them? Because you can spend forever looking for someone who completely agrees with you and get nowhere, because no one's going to completely agree with you, completely agree with every single point you want to make. It's going to make every single point you make sound like roses. Trump, like he says, I can solve everything. I'm the one that has all the answers. I'm the only one that can solve these problems. So he kind of cuts around that by saying, I don't need to worry about anybody else. You just need to listen to me. Well, we all know that's not going to work, because sooner or later, and he's hired people and putting people in office that totally agree with him. Well, sooner or later, there's going to be a problem that nobody that works for him or him is going to have an answer for. It's inevitable. It's a large world. We're a large country, and things happen. So you need to have people that may not always agree with you working for you. It is a necessity. It's not something people want, but it is a necessity. Trump makes the case, not him doing it, but his situation makes the case that you need a broader spectrum of people working for you, or you're going to run into some problems, and it's going to be crazy. And you need to listen to them. But again, we're talking about resources, how to use them, how to effectively pull the information out and say, this works, this doesn't, because you got to identify when you're using some of these resources, this is the part that I'm not espousing, I'm not agreeing with. Don't listen to this. People don't want to hear that either. Then you say, why are you listening to it in the first place? So we got to work towards using resources viably. The third example, believe it or not, is the Luka Doncic trade to the Lakers. When the news broke, Mavericks fans, or people who were Mavericks fans, it was devastating. People were devastated. They're angry. They're confused. They're trying to figure out what's going on. And this is important in using resources. Everybody had an opinion. Everybody was upset. But when something like that happens, most often, I'm still waiting on the jury on this one or to find out more. Most often, we don't know the whole story. You have to wait until the whole story comes out. And then, who do you trust for the whole story? And in using resources, you have to kind of know your resources. Who do I go to listen to? I mean, there are already multiple YouTube videos on why this trade went down. Who's viable? Who has the true inside story? We don't know right now, and we may not know for a while. because the major players involved, Luka says he doesn't know. Some of the other players were caught off guard. Nico Harrison is kind of being close-lipped. He's given a few simple answers to the question. All the pundits are coming out with their opinions. Some of them, you can kind of trust. They know the general idea around the NBA and what goes on, but the specifics of why Luka got traded to LA or why Luka got traded, period, they're still struggling with. They're offering opinions. Love that word, opinions. Title of this podcast and blog is got the word opinion in it. So you have to be aware of what is an opinion and what is true facts. And that's another problem, struggling with resources. How much of the person you are listening to has a true fact versus just an opinion? And I base much of what I talk about on opinions. I do base it on some general things that have happened, some actual facts that happens. If you look, and I've written about this a bunch, over the years, our education system is declining against other countries, other developed countries, the quality of our education. Some points it still says it's number one or close to number one, but really when you look at it deep down, take deep dives, you're seeing quality of education, especially the public education, dwindle. There's a huge wealth gap increasing every year. I mean, that's talked about, something that needs to be addressed, because sooner or later you can't have all power and wealth concentrated in a few people or you're going to have problems. Different kinds of problems than the one Trump is talking about, but there's another organization out there called Pitchfork Economics. I'll let you look them up. There's some things they say, again, picking and choosing your resources. I have mentioned them before years ago, and I occasionally still listen to them, but I don't really pull them as a resource. I could, because they do have some things I really like. And since I talked about in my blog post, I'm going to be using more resources. You probably will see some of their information shared in relation to or in regards to the points I want to make. They have good points. Not going to say everything they publish is what I want you to hear. So again, in picking and choosing resources to validate points, support your thinking or my thinking, you have to be careful, because it could come from sources you may not even have an iota respect for. Donald Trump, I've never had a respect for him. I think he's been a fraud since the 80s. I never liked him on Howard Stern, didn't like The Apprentice, so forth, so on. Spends 2 minutes on the show telling people they're fired. Wow. Really great there, Donald. Show was done by other people. But he got his name on it. Everybody thought he was great on it. Okay, that's what it is. But people aren't deplorables. They're hardworking people, and their opinions matter. And they like Donald Trump. And they put him in office because he said some things that are viable needs. Again, for example, better immigration policy. He did it in a way that got their attention, something maybe I should pay attention to. I don't want to be bombastic and tell everybody I can solve all the problems. I try to be a little bit more, let's work together, get this done kind of thinking. But he did create the anger and the fear. He had help. I mean, if you read the book I talked about, Hate Incorporated, you can see how the media had big drivers behind how Donald Trump became successful. But you got to understand what people are saying and not be afraid to use different resources. I'm not quite sure how I feel about Richard Wolff yet, but he makes some great points that can be used. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. Whenever you're trying to make an opinion or whenever you're trying to create change, and I don't know if I'm trying to create change, and even though I say we need new parties and new leadership, I'm not trying to change. I still want our Constitution. I still want the market economy. I still want balance in our world in regards to, the government needs to kind of play referee with capitalism. They need to keep track and make sure people stay in line, not poison our water and things of that nature, which the Democrats are supposed to be behind. They've just failed doing it for the longest time. But the idea behind those kind of thinking is rational and needed. You have to come up with public policy that allows for growth in the economy, allows for people to be successful. Nothing wrong with those two things, but they cannot come to the point of tearing our world apart just so they can be successful. Little things and, public policy that need to be there. But that's a different story for a different day. Just wanted to use some examples of why I struggle with using resources. They are a good thing to use, but they're not always going to align exactly with how you want to make your point. Anyway, it's a cloudy day in North Texas. Hope yours is going well. Thank you.